久不见，我叫 Denise. Long time no see. I'm Denise, the Pharmacist filmmaker. So today I'm going to be talking about this movie I just watched on Hulu. It's called Once Upon a Time. It's a 2017 Chinese film. It's like fantasy, drama. The thing about Chinese movies is that they'll have like different names. So like I was looking it up, and some places it's called Eternal Love, and I don't know. So as far as where I watched it, it's called Once Upon a Time from 2017 on Hulu. So as always, I love spoilers, so I give spoilers. I'm just going to tell you the whole story and like my interaction with the movie, my thoughts on it and what I saw. So if you are, one of those no spoilers people, stop it here, go watch Once Upon a Time, and then come back and let us discuss. Okay, here we go. So I'm looking down at my notes. I took a bunch of notes as I watched the movie just to, keep my thoughts down and clear and everything. So it starts off with this woman running. She's jumping off a cliff, and she's turns into a white wolf. I thought it was a wolf, but when I read stuff, it's a fox. So I don't know. I always thought foxes were a lot smaller, but it says she's turned into a fox. So let's go with that. So she turns from a person in her fall, and she has this like blindfold on, and then she turns into a white, luxurious fox with like this like beautiful like flowing pillowy tail with like 6 different like pieces of it. Beautiful animal. It's really a visually stunning movie. Like just very rich colors. So she falls into this like jungle, this like lush garden, and there's animals running around, and the animals, it's like, I guess it's CGI, like computer generated images, but I thought it looked great. I thought it looked amazing. I was all here for it. I really enjoyed it visually. So now on, it looks definitely like a very rich, lush fairy tale, this garden that she's in, and there's like blossoms everywhere and beautiful flowers, beautiful trees, everything looks good. So it turns out she's 140,000 years old, and she's engaged to a prince who's 50,000 years old younger than her. And she just like lives her life drinking. She just drinks and drinks and drinks and drinks alcohol. She sort of basically has a carefree life, just lives by herself. There's this guy who is like her friend, and he hangs out with her sometimes. He's usually taking care of like the blossoms and the trees and stuff. And yeah, so she doesn't like have other friends, and she doesn't care about like meeting other people either. So there's this like standing invitation to go to this other kingdom, because she has an arranged marriage. So she's engaged to this guy who's 50,000 years, no, he's 50,000 years old. So, and yeah, she doesn't like care about him or anything though. So whatever happens this time, she decides like, okay, fine, I'm going to go to the party and just like all of the people around her, all the little animals like sort of urge her to go. So she goes, and when she leaves like her kingdom, she has to wear like a blindfold because like the sun is like too bright for her eyes. So when she goes, but she still has like really great senses, like she can fight with her blindfold on. She knows like where everything is spatially with her blindfold on. So she meets this little baby when she goes to the other kingdom, and this little baby, just a cute little chubby boy, he keeps calling her mom. He's really sweet to her. And she's just like, where's the wine? Like, can you show me where the wine is? And so he shows her where the wine is. And then as she's like trying to drink and get all the wine by herself, this person comes to kidnap the baby. So, and I say baby, but he's like, I don't know, 9 or 10 or something, but that's a baby. So when she realizes that he's getting kidnapped, and so she goes and like fights the person. It turns out it's this woman who's like from the demon clan or something like that. And she saves the baby. Then, but her blindfold's still on. So now the boy's father comes, who's the crown prince, it turns out, and her fiance. He comes and he's like, how dare you try and steal my child? Like, get away. And then so she was like, oh, you think I don't know that you're coming to kidnap him? And it's just this like cute little scene where they both think each other is like trying to kidnap the kid. And eventually her blindfold gets cut off, and then the fiance, the crown prince, he realizes it's his fiance. So he's just like happy to see her. She like sort of busts his chops a little bit, saying like, you should call me, like, I'm your elder, don't be so informal with me, and stuff like that. And he's just like happy, I guess, and the baby's happy. And so they bump into a couple of people, and it's like when they start bumping into other people, she starts getting like some sort of deja vu, but she doesn't know exactly, you know how deja vu is. It's like, think I've seen this before, I think I've met you before, I think I've experienced this before, but I can't put my finger on it. So she has a bunch of those experiences. Then she bumps into this woman who she just thinks has the most beautiful eyes. So that's a thing that happens. They end up going back to like, so she just leaves, the main character. She's like, and she has so many names. It's like Susu is one name when she's mortal, and then I think her name is Chen Chen when she's like the royal immortal queen. But I can't keep track of any names ever. That's just a thing. I never keep track of people's names in movies. So main character woman. So she goes back to her home, and then it turns out that her fiance and her son, the boy who keeps calling her mom, they follow her back home, and they decide like, we're gonna live here together as a family. It's really weird. She's like, no, that's not gonna happen. And then basically her fiance is just like, how about you let us stay? If we end up falling in love, cool. If not, well, we tried. So she's just like, okay. I mean, it's not going to happen. I'm not going to fall in love, but we know when that is said in a movie, of course they're going to fall in love, right? So there's this like cave in the kingdom where it has this guy who's frozen, and the main character, she goes to visit him sometimes, and she calls him master, and she's just like, I've been waiting for you. And that's where this theme of like waiting starts. So it's an ongoing theme throughout the movie with many different characters. It's like some people are waiting for their loved one to return, waiting for the prince believes that she is his wife who died, and so he's waiting for her to get her memory back. The main character woman, she's waiting for her master in the cave who's frozen for his soul, which has been scattered, to like be made whole again, and for him to come back to her. The demon clan leader woman who tried to kidnap the baby, she's waiting for revenge. So it didn't really go too much into it with her, but basically she lost her baby, and so she wanted to kidnap this immortal baby, and I guess bring back her child using this kidnapped child who's immortal. So I mean, that I understand her hurt, you know, so that it at least she had like a reason. It wasn't just like being evil just to be evil. However, I don't know. It's a lot to unpack. So eventually they fall in love. Like, the prince tells her the story of like how he met his wife originally. Basically, he had been fighting in like the heavenly palace or up in the clouds, and he had been squashing a rebellion that was happening. He fought like for a week straight, so he was really weak, and he fell down to like the mortal realm, and he didn't have his powers. He was just like a mortal person. So his wife just happened to wander upon him, and she took care of him and she nursed him back to health, and just out of the goodness of her heart. So when he got better, he was just like, oh my gosh, like, how can I ever repay you? You saved my life. So then she's like, oh, you can marry me, which is so weird to say. Like, she doesn't know anything about him. She doesn't know his family. She doesn't know, like, how does he make a living? Does he want children? Like, she was just like, I guess husbands are falling out of the sky today. She got her husband because he said, yeah, I think that's a really good idea. Let's get married. And they got married. So sometimes it rains husbands. Like, I don't want a husband. Can it rain down a warrior, crown prince, loving, nice, sensitive boyfriend for me? I'll take one of those. Like, oh my goodness, it was really funny how it happened. So okay, so now oh, I did like just to comment real quick on what she wears. So the main character, sometimes she'll have to fight. Like it has a bunch of battles in it. It has a bunch of fighting scenes. They're all pretty good. But what I really appreciated about the movie was when the main character has to fight, she's always fully dressed. So, you know, sometimes with like action, women in action movies or whatever, it'll be like either like extra tight stuff or like accentuate the boobs and like, or it'll be like the girl is in the jungle and she has little shorts on and a tank top, and it's like, no, there's like ticks and stuff. Like, no, you want to cover your skin so you can like protect yourself from like weapons and hurt and whatever. But so I really appreciated that they had her always covered like up to like here, but it was always like really cute outfits, and like they'd be like long sleeves, and it would just look, all her costumes were really nice in it. So as they've fallen in love, basically for the second time, it's sort of like a reincarnation thing, reincarnation story. Not sort of, it is. But it's like you're not totally sure, but because I watched the whole thing, like, yeah, it's just a reincarnation movie. So she starts to accept, you know, this new life of hers with her her crown prince to be her husband, and, you know, this to be her child, and she's like being happy, and I feel like she was drinking less too. So they go up to the heavens to like get married, and so it's going to be like this royal huge wedding. And while she's there, she sees that woman who she met originally at the first banquet, the first party, she calls her Beautiful Eyes. And the woman it turns out she's like, it just turns into one of these things where they are fighting over, there's bad blood because over a man. So Beautiful Eyes, it turns out she was supposed to be married to the crown prince originally, back when the main character was immortal, and then was a mortal, not immortal. So when he brought her up, when the crown prince brought up his wife who was mortal, this Beautiful Eyes girl got really, really pissed, and she has been plotting the downfall of this relationship basically since then, because she's like been snubbed. So I guess that makes sense. However, it's just like, ugh, another storyline of women fighting other women because of men. Like, we can compete over other things like power, we can compete for jobs, we can compete for over like knowledge and stuff like that. We can compete over like who's going to, because there's all this power, because people are immortal, like why not compete over who can improve the lives of other people like better. And but no, we just decided to be simple and basic and compete over men. Well, that's what happened. So we keep going back and forth, like from the old, like the original story, which was the mortal woman met the prince, they got married, and then eventually they go to live in the heavenly palace. And then the current story where both the prince and the queen, who is the main character, both of them are royals and immortal, and then they also fall in love and go to get married in the heavenly palace. So we're going back and forth between those two stories. So when basically it comes out that Beautiful Eyes tried to bully, I guess, tried to kill the main character originally in the original story. So when she like takes her up to this cliff, and she tells her like, you know, your husband doesn't want you, you're just causing a lot of trouble for him, you should jump. So it's just weird. It's such a weird, I don't know, it's weird to me. It was really weird because it turns out that she's been left alone this whole time. Like the crown prince brought her up to the heavenly palace, left her there by herself and settled her, and then never like came back. And then it turns out she's pregnant with his son, and he still has not come back. So she's, again, the theme of waiting. She's just waiting for her husband to come back. It turns out he hadn't told anybody else like who she was. So because he didn't get permission from his father, like to marry her and all this stuff. So everybody just thinks she's like a new maid. And so now during her just waiting, Beautiful Eyes takes her to the cliff to jump, and she's just like, no, like my husband, you know, like she calls for her husband. She's like, no, and Beautiful Eyes is like, he doesn't want you, like you're too much, like you're not supposed to be here, just jump. And so the main character is calling for her husband, screaming his name as she's trying to like not get pushed off a cliff to her death. And so her husband shows up, and in this, you know, fight it wasn't a fight, it was just a like, I'm trying to not get pushed off the cliff. The other Beautiful Eyes she actually like falls off the cliff. So her husband shows up just when that's happening. He goes down, saves Beautiful Eyes, and then brings her back to safety. So Beautiful Eyes starts being like, oh my god, like your wife tried to kill me. It's just, like she pushed me. And so he looks at his wife like, what? Like just deception and betrayal. Like that's how he looks at her. And I'm just like, all right, buddy, save your deception and betrayal looks. You have left your pregnant wife unprotected, waiting here for you. You have not introduced her to your father. Like, shush your mouth and stop all those looks, because your wife has been going through it. She's literally like trying to fight for her life, and you have the audacity to come here and give her a look like, did you hurt, you know, my previously intended wife, like my ex-fiance, basically? And so she's just like, no, husband, I didn't do that. She's not telling the truth. And then so now Beautiful Eyes starts being like, my eyes, she hurt my eyes. And she's crying into the crown prince's like body, into his chest. And he's just like, oh my gosh. So next scene, the main character, she's getting sentenced to have her eyes gouged out, her eyes taken out, to comfort Beautiful Eyes. And it turns out this is where she gets her beautiful eyes from. So because they take out her eyes, they take out the main character's eyes, legit, and then they're given to the princess. So she's just crying, like, as the main character is crying, like, before they're about to do this. And so her husband shows up, and then he's just like, sadly, he asks permission to be the one to cut her eyes out. And so I'm just like, what is happening? Because first off, it took me by surprise. Like, what do you mean somebody's eyes are getting taken out? And everybody's just like, well, the eyes are getting taken out, you know? And she's just like resigned there crying. Then when her husband pulls up, I'm like, okay, you know, you're going to take your wife and we're going to fly out of here. Like, maybe the heavenly palace is not for us. Like, maybe go back down to earth and live happily there. No, he says, oh, may I be the one to take her eyes out, but with a sad face. And so all I'm trying to think, like, I don't exactly know why he did that, why he offered to do it. We sort of find out later, but basically there's this other show that I watched called Underground, and it's an American show about slavery, American slavery. And in it, there was this one scene where this slave, he ran away. And so he was caught, and his punishment was going to be that they were going to cut off his foot, to like show other people, to first of all punish him for running away, but then to show others, like, don't run away or this brutality is going to happen to you as well. So his mom who's also a slave, she begs like the master for her to be the one to cut off his leg. And then she actually does it. She like saws it off. It's crazy. So she explains to him later on, because he assumes that like she was forced to do it as like some brutal, like, you know, sentence of a mom having to hurt her child as well. But she's like, no, I begged to do it because I knew that I would cut off your leg in a way that it would heal properly and you'd still be able to use it, versus somebody else who would cut off your leg and just like brutally chop it, and you would be in like more issues later on. So I'm like, maybe that's what's happening here. Like, did he feel like he would maybe be taking her eyes out more compassionately? I don't know. But later on, we find out that he was forced to, I guess basically his dad made him be the one to take her eyes out with his own hands. So we don't actually see the eyes being like gouged out. It goes to this very, again, visually stunning, artistic vibe. It goes to the scene where like you see like a drop of blood like come down and sort of like blossom into like, it just, you watch the ripples of the blood like drop. But it was a pretty scene, just that's what they did instead of actually showing the eyes being gouged out. And then for the rest of the time she has a blindfold. So even after that, after getting her eyes gouged out, the main character, she stays in the heavenly palace, and the beautiful eyes, the bad princess, she keeps like messing with her still. She's not done. Like, her eyes are gone. You have her eyes, and she still is threatened by the main character. So I think that speaks to the strength of her. And it's also like a real life lesson that you might feel like you're nothing. You might feel like you're the lowest of the low or something. And it's because other people are like saying things like that to you. But if you weren't a threat, nobody would have to say anything negative to you or to try and keep you down. So it speaks to the strength of the main character, that even with her eyes gone, she's still competition, I guess, even though I hate talking about two women fighting over a man because gross. So again, Beautiful Eyes takes main character up to the cliff, and now she's given birth to her son. And so she's holding on to her son. Her maid sort of like helped her realize that like, she's in danger and they need to run. But anyways, Beautiful Eyes takes her up again to the same cliff. And she's like, you need to jump because even though you had his son, like, it doesn't mean anything and blah, blah, blah. So she calls again for her husband. He shows up, and then Beautiful Eyes again lies. And Beautiful Eyes is like, oh my God, she just wants to commit suicide. She wants to jump. Like, I was trying my best to try and save her, and I just wish that, like, you know, we could make things better. Like, but she wants to jump. So once again, the husband just being a basic man, I can't with him. He looks and he's just like, oh, please don't jump, like, whatever. So she just sort of like has this moment of, I don't know, like everything's hurting her, like the main character, everything's like she's just evaluating her life and this life that has been here, and the tragedy that's happened, and how it seems like they're always doomed and everything. And she just sort of hands her baby over to him, names the baby, and then she does jump. She said, I release you. Like, we don't owe each other anything anymore, because maybe she felt like that's where all this drama came from, because I saved him originally when he was down on earth. Then he repaid me by marrying me. Then we come up here and like it just horrors happen. So she just was like, to end that cycle of pain and tragedy, let's stop this cycle of owing each other stuff. So I release you. She hands over the baby and she jumps. And then so that's like the beginning scene that we had seen. So this is when now she becomes the queen of the immortal queen. She gets like reincarnated into that person. But basically she drank like some forgetting drink, so that she would not have to remember all the horrors she endured in like her in this previous life. So that's why like she never remembers, even when her baby sees her later and is calling her mom, like she doesn't know him. So they keep saying this phrase, and it's there are 10 miles of peach blossoms, but one is enough for my heart. And I think the movie is actually based on like a book, maybe it's a trilogy, but it's all from there. It's like a popular book. So what else happened that was interesting? We do find out eventually that it turned out the crown prince was always fighting for his wife behind the scenes, basically. When his dad found out, you know, that he married someone without his knowledge, and then she's a human and all this stuff, he was pissed. And then Beautiful Eyes had been plotting how to get the main character killed. So she was actually supposed to be killed originally, but then the prince stepped up and was like, I'm going to take her punishment for her. Like, just let me be the one. So he gets like whipped with lightning, like just lightning coming out of the sky and whipping his back. And he still has like all these scars from that, which he endured. So it was actually pretty nice that he was fighting for his wife this whole time, because I had been done with him like for most of the movie. Like, why do you keep believing this person who's not your wife? Why are you not protecting your wife? Why are you just always letting her go? It's so easy like to just let her go. But it turns out he was like being beaten up and taking all these hits for her behind the scenes without telling her, which is nice. It speaks to his integrity and his honor. So when she had jumped off, when she handed the baby to him, this is what we find out. When she handed the baby and she jumped off and she's like, I release you. So usually he would have just been able to jump after her and like bring her back and be like, no, like we're one, like we're going to live and make, be happy together. But he couldn't, because he had been getting all this abuse on her behalf. So he wasn't at his full strength of power. So that's why he wasn't able to go save her, and it started this whole unfortunate thing where her memory's gone and all of that. So when she ends up doing that again, basically, like it just seems like everything just like repeats itself. She does get her memory back as an immortal. She gets her memory back, she remembers everything, but she sort of gets mad at him the same way I was mad, because she didn't know the whole story, that like he was fighting for her the whole time. So she's mad at him and she's just like, enough, like I'm just gonna go back to my old life, back to my life of being a queen, an immortal queen in um, the lush garden with all my little animals and my lack of friends, because that's better than all this nonsense up here. So she jumps down there. He follows her, but she's not seeing him. Like, she won't see him. She refuses to talk to him. And he's like, you know what? I'm just gonna wait. That's okay. I can just wait. And so he waits through like a bunch of seasons, just, which was, I have to say, when it was me seeing the man waiting on the woman, I thought it was romantic. You see him just standing out in like this garden with all the cherry blossoms, and all the seasons are just changing, and it's like winter and it's fall and it's spring and all this stuff. And he's just there. He's in the same spot waiting. I have to say though, if it was the other way around and it was the woman waiting on this guy who won't give her the time of day, I would have just been like, oh, I'm done with this. So I recognize my bias in that, but it did come off romantic to me. So eventually, they do send Beautiful Eyes away. So Beautiful Eyes had to return her the eyes that she had taken from the main character, and then so now she's walking around with a blindfold, and they now then they clear main character's name, and they tell Beautiful Eyes that she's exiled to like this nasty place. So while she's there, when she gets exiled, she basically says a prayer to like the demon king, and she's just like, you know what, I failed. She wants him to rise and bring hell to the earth. And then she's just like, I failed to get the crown prince. I failed to get his heart, but next time around, I'm going to get, like in my next life, I'm going to get his heart. And I'm just like, not that you should be praying to demon kings and releasing hell on earth, but if you were going to, why would you waste that wish on being somebody's wife? Like, yeah, you'd be I guess the princess or whatever, the crown prince. Well, no, you're not I don't know how that works actually. He's the crown prince because he was born to it and he's the heir, and then I don't know what his wife is called. But why waste that wish? Like, if you want power, that you're going to get, the power you'd get through marrying this man, why not just ask for power for yourself? Like, I just don't get it. Not that you should be going into deals with demons, because it never ends up well. But if you were going to do it anyways, why not? Why do you have to use this like intermediary of like, okay, let me marry him because then I'm going to have like a high stature and I'm going to have power and I'm going to have like happiness or whatever, and I'm going to rule over everybody. No, just be like, demon king, give me all the power, let me rule over everybody without somebody else there. Like, but people just waste wishes. And everybody knows if you get a wish, you always use it to wish for more wishes. That's just wishing 101. So she failed at that too. So now he has waited for a long time. The crown prince waited just in the garden waiting on his wife. And she's not seeing him all this time. And she's considering whether or not to drink the drink again to forget everything. But then she realizes, like, she drank it the first time and her life still found a way to come back, and her memory came back and all this stuff. So her friend who's been in the garden with her, he says, there's some things you can just never forget. Like, some things will like imprint on your heart, and you don't forget it. So that was really interesting, because it sort of had the point of like, maybe this really is true love, that like no matter what happens, no matter what you try to do, like it's going to come back around for you, because this is supposed to be. So she's just like, no. Like, she went back to her drinking and she's just really wallowing, which I can't blame her for that. She's been through a lot. So now Crown Prince is gonna leave, and it's because the Demon King has been woken up and he's out of his cage, and Crown Prince has to go fight and squash the rebellion. So he leaves, because a former maid of the immortal queen, the main character, comes to talk to her. That maid tells her the whole full picture of what her husband had been doing all the time, and how he was being beaten on her behalf, and how he tried to save her, and it was always her. She was always his love. Like, she paints the full picture. So now the main character when she finds out about that, she just feels like, oh my goodness, like, I need to talk to him, I need to go see him, but he's already gone off to defeat the Demon King. So she is just like running. So she changes into a fox, and she's just the cutest little fox, like majestic, but very, very cute. And she's running. She's all in white, and her tail is like her tail is like this, but not weird like I'm doing, but like very majestic, like flowing behind her, like Beyonce hair flowing with the fan going on. Like, that's how she's running. It's a beautiful run. And so she's running hard to get to him. He's fighting he's fighting off like a huge demon army. The woman who had originally tried to kidnap his son to resurrect her own son, she's there leading the army too. The Demon King is there. And her friend, the main character's friend, the only friend who had been like in the story with her, human friend, he is actually like a god of like another generation, and so he goes to the fight as well. He's usually turns into like this big bird that's like, maybe it's like a phoenix, but I don't know exactly. It's just a majestic, beautiful bird. So everybody's headed to this big fight. A lot of fighting's happening. Eventually, when she gets there, it's like the final part of the battle. Oh, there was this one really cute scene in the battle. So the demon army is like down here on the ground. And the ground is like, it's like the rock that's been made after a volcano that has erupted, and it forms like, so it's like black and interesting looking. So the demon army is like on the rocks, and they're fighting. So then a swarm of hummingbirds show up, and they're the cutest little, like, most colorful, cute birds. They show up, and they're humming. They're just in the air doing their little flappity flap hum. And so first it's just like, oh, okay, I guess they're there. But then eventually, I guess the noise gets to the demon army, so they're all like, oh my god, I can't hear, like, I'm hurting, my ears are hurting. And then eventually the hummingbirds continue, and whatever, I guess, their noise, the vibrations, it sort of breaks apart the rocks that the demon army is standing on. And then it lifts up the rocks, like, so there's just a moment where it's like a bunch of hummingbirds, beautiful little cute hummingbirds, then a bunch of rocks in the sky, then the demon army is at the bottom on what's left of the ground. Then it's like 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, and the hummingbirds are like, let's drop it. They drop all the rocks. It was a very beautifully shot scene. I loved that part. It was so cute, like, in the midst of all this like nasty like fighting. It was a very cute scene. It was like, go hummingbirds, it doesn't matter your size, you have something to contribute, working together, all right. So at the end of the battle, the crown prince basically, like, to lock up the demon king, the person who goes to lock him up has to sacrifice themselves, and their like soul scatters. So that's what the guy who's in the cave, frozen, he did that. So he originally did that and locked away the demon king the first time, I guess. So now the crown prince is gonna do it again. Like, he's gonna sacrifice himself. So of course, main character girl, she's just like screaming for him not to do it, and we see like that's the same way that she had screamed in this third life for her master, who is the guy frozen in the cave, not to do it as well. So he does it though. He does it, and he gets frozen. And she's just heartbroken, and she's like, she's telling him, like, I remember everything now. Like, you promised we'd have a good life. Like, don't die and all this stuff. At the same time, we see the master who's like in the cave and frozen, who had done this last time, like he breaks free. And I guess he's also the crown prince, like reincarnated. I'm still a little like iffy. I don't exactly understand it. But I think that's what you're supposed to get from it. And then it's like, it just goes to another scene. And in this other scene, the crown prince, or the guy who just woke up from the ice, I don't know, the crown prince, I think, he's in the garden and he's like calling out to his wife and he's like, hey, come here. So that's how it ends. So it's like happiness, but I still don't know which man is she with. Like, is it in reincarnation, are you supposed to believe they're all the same one, like the same guy, or is it like there are two bodies though? Like I don't understand it. I'm not clear on the ending, but I think they wanted us to know that she was happy. So I'm assuming it's the current crown prince who she has this son with was in the garden calling out to her to come, and she was like running happily to him. So yeah, I thought it was a really well done movie. It was very interesting. It kept my attention. They kept saying Your Highness. So sometimes they'd say Your Highness. Like I was reading it with English subtitles. It's in Mandarin, and it sounded like they'd say like meow meow. Like that's how they kept saying Your Highness to the main character. They're like meow meow, or it was like meow meow. So I looked it up on Google Translate. It's like what I looked up. What does Your Highness mean? Like how do you say Your Highness in Mandarin? And then Google Translate is like dian xia. Yeah, I think it's like dian xia. And I'm like, that's not meow meow. It was so cute. I heard it like many times. They were saying something like that, meow meow or meow meow. But that's not what Google Translate said. And I didn't know how else to look it up then, because I guess it's just like, yeah, you can have synonyms for stuff, like, but I don't know. So I think they were saying meow meow. But Google Translate does not. So I thought it had a good mix of roles for women, specifically the main character. I like that you usually don't see like a woman who just drinks a lot but is like still very competent. Like they usually do that with like male characters, I guess. But she really drank a lot. Like they went out of their way to show that she's like an alcoholic. But we know that was just her dealing with this past that she had, and couldn't remember. Visually stunning, totally loved it. I would love to make a movie that looks like something like that. It was awesome. I'm sure it took a lot of money to make. And yeah, I totally recommend it. It was it was an interesting story as well. And even though it was like a big story, with many different parts, it was told well. Like usually when you go between that like past and present and different lives, like it can get messy. But I feel like, except at the end, because I still don't know who it was, I feel like they kept it like really well organized and easy to follow. There wasn't a lot on the third, so it's like 3 different lives. So it was the main character, let's say, so she was a human, then when she was the immortal, and then there was her other life when she was like fighting by the side of the guy who's frozen. So they didn't really talk a lot about or show a lot of that life where she had that master who she was, who sacrificed himself. So I guess that maybe they just had to make cuts on that, or maybe it would be like a lot longer, but I think it still would have been good even without that third life. Like if it was just 2 lives, I think it still would have been a really strong movie. Maybe in the book, it's like a bigger role for that third life of hers, but not in the movie. So yeah, tell me if you watched it. Let me know in the comments like what your thoughts were. If you have any other recommendations for movies that I should watch. Again, I like female-driven movies, female main characters where women are not being silly. Silly meaning like just ridiculous and So if you have any recommendations like that, let me know. And let me know where to watch it, like YouTube, Hulu, Netflix, Amazon Prime, wherever. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching this. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. 谢谢, thank you. Goodbye. 再见.